Yeah, actually. Welcome, party people. Hello. We are going into Don't Be Coca-Cola, aka digital marketing. The first is kind of a joke name. We'll get into it. Is everybody settled? Everyone? All right. Well, thank you for joining us. We have some grapes if you would like to eat them. They are available. We also have blubber, aka blueberries. I will say it is blubber. The Swedes are looking confused. It's okay. Sorry, that expression is wonderful. All right, so let's get into the actual talk. We're going to go over some very basics of digital marketing today. These basics will hopefully be able to kind of coach you through how to get started with digital marketing. I know that a lot of people who go to create games aren't necessarily experienced with creating for the online world, although they may be experienced with consuming for the online world. I'll see if I can pick apart some of the things that make what works work versus what doesn't work, maybe where it can be improved. So we're going to go over three basic concepts. First is character. People love something to relate to. And one of the things that people love to relate to is another person. So, first examples. I am not presenting still. What do these people have in common? Any takers?
Internet fame.
Internet fame, yes.
Internet hate.
Internet hate, yes. But most importantly, you don't know them. Probably. If you do, let me know. I would love to talk to you. But all of these people, I have watched for years. I mean, Mr. Beast on and off, but Markiplier, I've been watching since like 2014, 2015. And even though I've spent hundreds of hours at this point, consuming his content, thinking about what he says critically, listening to him respond to criticism, comment on situations, all of these things, I don't know Markiplier. You may have heard of parasocial relationships where people believe that they have a relationship with a streamer or with a content creator, but the dude doesn't even know your name. The thing is, the person you're getting to know online is a character. They are playing a character. It's a persona. It's a mask that they put on. You are a character. That or your company is, or your game. Whatever you're representing online, you are representing it via a character. This both prevents your drama, your history, and your conflicts from coming into the game and preventing its success, as well as maybe some drama, history, and conflicts of the game affecting your life and your livelihood. So it's very important to remember that when you are online, you are a character. So let's think about how we need to create that character. We've got Balin just as visual candy. Enjoy him. So first we have to think about our voice. Who are we? When I go into marketing for a game or a brand, what I'm thinking about is, who am I to the audience? Who I am will determine how I engage the audience. If I am representing an RPG, I might think from a narrative perspective, me as the voiceover, I am someone in the world telling you about the world. Maybe a guide on a path. But it can be a lot simpler than that too. I can just be the creator of the game, and I can talk about how the game is made, and that is a different kind of engagement that comes from a different voice. We also have to think about what we stand for. If you look at games such as Billy Bust Up, you'll see a lot of conversations around autism, different LGBT identities, All of those are instrumental to their different videos. And that honestly has become part of their voice. It's part of what the game stands for, and so it's important for them to talk about it. What's the tone? When you're in an RPG, you might choose something serious. Again, if you're talking like a character from the world, you might try to have this very spooky vibe. You might have this, if it's kind of a mystery horror situation, you might be very bright and bubbly. Or you maybe just have a very bland outside perspective tone. Your tone and your level of enthusiasm will kind of determine how enthusiastic the audience is. Have you ever listened to someone talk about their special interest? It's incredible. I had someone talk to me about this horror RPG sort of thing called Blaseball that was like artificially simulated all of the games. The characters had names, but they didn't have official designs. All sorts of stuff for, I think, 4 or 5 hours. It was incredible. I learned so much about Blaseball that day and the drama and lore behind it, and I was engaged for probably about 2 or 3 of those hours. You do get tired, you do get fatigue, and you do have to make sure that you're not fatiguing your audience and creating super long content that's not repetitive. The other thing is same but different. Here's the thing. There are literally millions and billions of online users. I promise you, somebody in that ocean of people is going to have a very similar tone to you. They're going to have a very similar character to you. You have to focus on what's unique about you. Your game, or the character in the game, or some of the lore. Things that other people can remember and think, oh, it's that game. It's the RPG where, I don't know, you are a matchmaker who is in medieval times, and the way you matchmake makes the world change. People remembering that. There's all sorts of matchmaking games, but you are a matchmaking medieval game. So make sure that even though there's going to be people who are the same, you keep in mind what's important to you, you keep in mind your voice, and that's how you stand out. Next is the appeal, which I think all of us can see with our own projects. What does your game offer that others don't? UVP means unique value proposition. A unique value proposition is like a sales pitch. It's very short. It's, my game is this, but with that, or our game has XYZ. Why would someone care about your game versus everyone else? Similar to your voice being different, same but different is a good UVP, so is very different or groundbreaking. But make sure that when you create your value proposition, it's not just that you're very excited for the game. Very common for you to be very excited about the projects. What makes you excited about the game, and what would make other people excited about the game? Second is market research. Go and actually look at other games, especially games in the same genre, in the same niche as you. See what they're doing. Obviously, you're not going to be stealing from them or copying them. Be very careful about respecting them, but you can collaborate with them. You can work with them, and you can see how you are different, and you can make that difference really stand out. You can polish it, make sure it shines. Then you've got to think about who would like your game. In Placeholder Gameworks, we have 2 games currently. We have Craft, and we have Broken Alliance. Broken Alliance is an isometric RPG type of game. It's got a lot of lore. It's pixel art. Generally, we're shooting for an older demographic than we would be, say, for Craft, which is very much like Death and Taxes. Very cozy, very cute, very welcoming. Not as much gameplay elements as, say, Broken Alliance. Or high-stakes gameplay elements. Because of that, it's generally probably going to have a much younger demographic. I mean, not kids, but like young adults. Then you've got to think about your genre. Where do you fit in the little niche that you're in? Because I'm telling you, you might think, oh, I'm a fantasy game. But what kind of fantasy game are you? Are you a cozy fantasy game? Are you a scary fantasy game? What niche are you filling? And then, of course, always keep in mind why you like your game. Because that's going to pull you through when other people start to interact. Finally, you've got your audience in mind, you've got your appeal in mind, you've got your voice in mind. You can start with your branding. Think about what platforms your demographic uses. Facebook is generally an older demographic. Twitter is a dumpster fire right now, but it's kind of broader as far as demographics go. TikTok is Gen Z, like me. And Instagram is kind of the bridge between Facebook and TikTok. So when you have your demographics in mind, check out which platforms they use. Make sure that the images you use to represent yourself and your game are representative. Don't use an image that's like super pixel art, retro style, and then your game is an extremely modern sort of slice of life sort of thing, That would just be kind of tonal dissonance. You want to make sure that everything you use communicates who you are and what your brand is. These can be images and screenshots, profile pictures, and bios for your Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Once you've kind of got all of this down with the branding, you can start building your community. Story! I stole this GIF from Ash. Sorry, Ash. You as a game developer and your story as a story are going to make up what keeps people engaged. People love stories. From the very beginning of time, people have sat around campfires and made things up to tell each other about the world or just things they thought were cool. This is you. You are sitting around the proverbial fire. It's a dumpster fire that is the internet, but it is still a fire. And you are talking about your game as a story. And before we do a super deep dive into that, does anyone have questions? Yo, what's up, Tintin?
Do you have any information on Tumblr and LiveJournal?
I haven't looked into the demographics of Tumblr and LiveJournal in a while, but I will look into that and I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? Anyone know if there's any questions in the stream?
Doesn't seem like it.
All right, thanks. Then let's move on. So now that you've got your story, you've got your branding, you've got your voice, let's talk about engaging content. It has 3 parts. It has a hook to keep you from scrolling immediately. It has the actual content that you're trying to get across. And it has a call to action. First, let's talk about the hook. There are different kinds of hooks that you can kind of use to keep people on your page. A lot of the time, if you're scrolling through TikTok, you'll hear, wait, stop, don't scroll. I personally find that extremely annoying. I don't know if that's super effective. It might be. What I do know is that there are many kinds of hooks that are less interruptive and less openly attention-grabbing. You can say something very interesting about your world, like a very cryptic tidbit, like don't go in the haunted forest at night, or you may find XYZ. And then it goes to the content where it's actually talking about this monster that's in the haunted forest, and then the call to action could be something similar to, which monster do you want to learn about next? So let's take a look at an example here.
This is a game dev trick that'll blow your mind.
Hold on.
A simple suggestion that won't take much time. If you want to be kind and grow your
Thank you,
user
TikTok.
base, listen up. Just let people play.
Now, while you're watching this, I want you to keep in mind the 3 parts: the hook, the content, and the call to action.
This is a game dev trick that'll blow your mind. A simple suggestion that won't take much time. If you want to be kind and grow your user base, listen up. Just let people play your game. Just let people play your game. What can go wrong? They can only care about a project for so long. If they can't get a game to play in their hands, you understand? So hop on the Patreon and play Superman. Please. I just want to make my game live.
So relatable content from Sleepyman. So let's talk about what makes up that video. What do you think would count as the hook in that video? It doesn't necessarily have to be a specific line. What is keeping someone from scrolling?
I'm not sure how TikTok works, so correct me if this is wrong, but the tune is really, really catchy.
Yes, that is definitely a good point. And for you?
Yeah, the first line is like, here's a game dev trick. So,
Yes. So both of those are excellent. You are engaging a community that you want to be passionate about your game, because if you engage the game dev community, you can work with them and you can promote between each other and you can make friends. And also people who are passionate enough about games to make games themselves might play your game. So yeah, both of those are excellent. Catchy tunes, I mean, we all know catchy tunes from our childhood. I'm going to cite an American one. And that would be, actually I think this might be Canadian. Don't you put it in your mouth, don't you put it in your mouth, don't stuff it in your face. And that was a PSA for for children to not eat random things they find on the floor. It was played all over TV and I can still remember it today. Then you also have advertising things like Red Robin, yum. Very silly, very simple, but it's music and it sticks in your head. So yeah, we have what we want to see and what keeps us there. So let's talk about the content. What is the content? What did we learn in that video?
There's a game for free to play.
Yeah, we did learn that. What were you going to say, Lucas?
Let people play your game.
Let people play your game. One of the game dev trick that he's advertised to us at the beginning, let people play the game. What was the call to action?
Play their game?
Yes, go to their Patreon, play their game. So overall we can see right here all three and think about how it worked in that particular example. Now let's take a look at asking questions from Play Nightingale. Ignore the suggested videos. Alright, so that was a much simpler video. Can we identify the hook?
Just mysterious monsters that you want to know more about.
Yeah, that also passes as the content in this particular video. What's the call to action?
It's in the hook. It's basically which monster is your favorite, so it forces you to go, oh yeah, I should look through this and think about which one is my favorite.
Exactly, and if you look on Play Nightingale's page, the important part of a call to action is that you provide something when they complete that action. So, we see on their page, people have actually asked, what about this one? Tell me about the bound. And they do, they tell us about the bound. And that's how we keep our players engaged, by telling them, by asking them questions, asking what they want to see, and giving it to them. They are very vocal. They will tell you what they want. Don't let it completely distract you from game and scope and all of that, but make sure that you're engaging them. Now let's look at another version. Going into this one, I will warn you, not everything has a hook content, or not everything I'm showing you will have all of the parts. We're identifying what goes good and what's maybe not so great, or what can be improved. It is not playing. TikTok, don't do this to me.
Just refresh.
but then I gotta do the whole login. Now let's talk about that. That was a freaking awesome character or creature. Love the harpy. Let's identify the hook.
You want to see how it's gonna turn out?
Yeah. That would be, I think, more the content. I think the hook would be how we made our harpy, that first little piece. If we look at the beginning. The content would be the creation of the harpy. What's the call to action?
I would argue that it's at the end when it says like pretty scary, right? Because it forces you to think, oh yeah, that was pretty scary.
Exactly. Now, let's think about how we could improve this. Because it has all of the pieces there. But let's talk about that call to action. Pretty scary, right, is a call to action. It makes you think. Was it pretty scary? Yeah, I would argue that this thing is terrifying. But the viewer isn't interacting with the content. The viewer isn't interacting with the game. They're probably just going to be like, yeah, that was scary, and scroll on. Meanwhile, if you ask, what do you want to see next, or what are your thoughts, that opens up, you're expecting them to actually write down their thoughts rather than just asking them a question. So I would say that this is actually a really good video. It shows really well how they animated the harpy, but I think that the call to action could be worked upon. And I think that that's something actually really important to think about when we're thinking about calls to action, is that we want people to have something they can physically do immediately that we have told them to do, basically. Tell us. You're using a very commanding, demanding voice. And again, that is an incredible video, and it deserves a lot of love. So, side note, if you guys want to follow that game, Ishtar Games, fantastic. I love the progress they're making. They're also making the medieval dating sim, or medieval matchmaking sim I mentioned earlier. Very creative people.
Well, there's a call to action.
That is a call to action. They have some incredible videos on that. So yeah, that is very good video. Just could use a slightly better call to action. Similarly to the Ask Questions Nightingale, we could probably use a better hook than just, which creature do you want? We could maybe have someone voicing it, something to engage the viewer visually and audially so that they remain, versus just visually where they might click off.
Maybe for the monsters also it's sometimes good to put like contrast. Like, do you like this super scary big or this super sly, I don't know,
Yeah.
small one, so that it gives you like maybe less choices, but
Yes.
more punchy.
So actually, that's a really good point. Breaking tropes or twisting tropes is a really good way to get people engaged with your content. By asking, or by showing them something that they wouldn't expect, that is automatically a hook. The content they will want to follow up with that is, why is it this way? Or tell me more about this tiny little fluffy ball that can destroy entire cities. You know, tell me more. I want to know more. So yeah, there's all kinds of hooks. It can be questions. It can be audio things like the music in Mr. Sleepy Man. It can be little trope breaking things like that. but make sure that it's visually and audially engaging.
At the risk of maybe being tonally clashing, but for that same video with the monsters and stuff, you could say, which monster do you identify with on a Monday morning?
Valid.
Something comedic like that, or something like that.
Yeah.
Of which of these images is you right now, or something.
I think that's actually really good, and that goes into something else too. The Nightingale TikTok is entirely serious. If you go through their videos, they're pretty much all, they don't really use CapCut templates. They don't really, when they respond to comments, they're not doing it in a jokey way. They don't generally show you the behind the scenes as much as they might show you the finished product to engage you. Whereas with, say, Ishtar Games, they use a lot of CapCut templates. They use a lot of very more lighthearted stuff. But let's say you have something very serious like Nightingale, but you want to engage the community. That content is engaging, but the level on which the community, fan content, theories, speculation, lore that people are going to be talking to each other about that will build your community, it's maybe not as powerful. Because you are telling them everything they need to know and maybe answering questions, but you are the arbiter of all content. That's where things like Twitter or Instagram, Facebook, all of those can kind of play in, where you have this other account where you're like posting memes about it or posting behind the scenes. If you do different content on different accounts, you can have different voices and still manage to not have your followers feel that tonal dissonance that might cause them to stop following you. If someone follows you for very cozy medieval matchmaker and gets very scary indie horror RPG or something, that will cause tonal dissonance. They might not want horror content on their page. Maybe they just want the really cute, cozy game stuff. And that might cause them to eventually unfollow or think, why am I following this person? Whereas if you're consistent with your tone throughout your content, it allows you to keep followers and build a community of like-minded followers. Having it in a separate, having the more silly, lighthearted stuff in a separate place from your more serious stuff still allows you to build up that fandom culture without necessarily sacrificing the tone of the page. Does that make sense? Any questions? What's up?
Can we talk about like the music choice for the third
Yes.
thing? Like you have a scary fantasy monster and the music is like lounge music or something. Is that normal on TikTok?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a lot of game dev content. That actually brings us kind of to our next slide, I believe. Platform sounds and music are very powerful. You have access to an entirely... It's not zooming out anymore, but that's okay. We can work with that. You basically have access to all this music and other stuff that you can't access on your own. And it would otherwise be very difficult to get the licensure for all of that, whereas platforms usually have sounds that you are able to use because the platforms have licensed that content, or they've otherwise been previously published on the platform. TikTok, for instance, will let you know when the music you're using isn't something you can promote, because it's not commercially licensed by TikTok. Instagram and Facebook may actually mute your content if you use music that's not licensed. So there's definitely a lot of careful consideration. And for that video in particular, again, we were using that free, royalty-free kind of jangle music, but we were talking about a horrifying harpy. We might have benefit more from like epic music, or even just like, I don't know if this is scary music in all places, but like really creepy lullaby sort of wind chimes in the night sort of music. Similarly, you don't actually hear that much music in most of the Play Nightingale things. You hear sounds from the game, or you hear most prominently the person talking. That's because the person talking is the main feature, and because it's an audio feature, you don't want to complicate it with other stuff. So yeah, when you're creating content, a lot of the time, content that is very serious is a full-time job, just by itself. And so when you are creating content, sometimes you're going to have low-key content between like major lore drops or announcements or campaigns. That's where these sounds and music come in. So you may have, if you've ever been on TikTok, you've probably heard, Mommy don't know, Daddy's getting hot. And then it switches over to somebody going, no, no, ba 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 da. Very silly. It's this very serious song, very silly sound mashed together. And it's used in TikToks to highlight like a difference between like expectations and reality or the duality of something. That can be a really easy way to get inspiration for a simple, quick video about like what we imagine our game to be like, what the game is actually like, or all sorts of things like that. In fact, we have an example from Ponko Games. Can we... I get it, Mount Fuji is beautiful, I don't need to see that. I would love to see Mount Fuji in person, but not on TikTok. Alright, so let's take a look at... So, beautiful animation, like studio quality animation. 1990s RPG. It's a very funny disconnect. It's very interesting. Now, there is a tonal disconnect between those art styles. Whether or not that affects the game, I really couldn't say. I'd have to see more of their content. But overall, you just get this very simple way to make videos that can show the difference and joke about it with your players. In fact, I think that one of the reasons this video is so engaging is because they're laughing at themselves. They're not laughing at some, like, game or someone else's work. They're like, look at this amazing trailer we made, and then look at our game. It's very nice. Self-deprecating humor is wonderful. Don't let it get out of hand, but it is wonderful in small pieces. If you're constantly hating on your game, people will be like, okay, why do I want to play it then? So, there's also things called CapCut templates. You may notice it's marked, oops, that's me. That's because I made this one. Thanks, it was one of my most engaging TikToks. Anyway. Now that TikTok could be better. I didn't really give people enough time to read the block of text. But that also can be useful because it makes people pause or rewatch it if they want to see the whole thing. Purposefully making your video broken can be good, but not if it's every video. But, you know, you see this very simple template. All I really had to do was plug a single image in, and I had to put a couple of notes, a couple of text blocks on there, and bam, that's the entire video. That's all the editing I had to do for that one. The template was the penguin doing Newt Newt and then looking horrified as Lacrimosa plays in the background. But it was a very simple way to put together a video when I didn't really have time or energy to put one together myself. There's also other uses of CapCut templates, like Ishtar Games again. I really like Ishtar Games. Hold on. Now that actually had a call to action. They're asking you if they should tell the devs. The answer is no, they'll get mad at you. Anyway. Kidding, of course. But yeah, anyway, it was a very simple way to put things together when clearly their game was maybe not doing all of the things that they wanted their game to be doing. So yeah, any questions on platform sounds and CapCut templates? What's up?
CapCut templates, are they easily accessible within the TikTok app?
No. So here's kind of how CapCut works. You download CapCut. TikTok will, when you're scrolling through TikTok, you might see a CapCut template. It will say, use in CapCut, or open CapCut, and you'll hit it, and it'll bring you into CapCut. You'll edit it in CapCut, and then you can upload it into TikTok. Once again, it's integrated, so once you hit upload, it just immediately takes you into TikTok to upload it. What's up?
Follow-up question. Does the CapCut thing work with Instagram as well?
Yes. So when you make a CapCut video, you can use it anywhere, but it's only not got a watermark if you're using it on TikTok. I think you can also pay to use no watermarks, but paying is for squares. Except if you're paying for our game. Anyway. So, any other questions?
How long would you like ballpark making TikToks like the one you made? Like is it like
Okay.
half hour, multiple hour kind of thing?
CapCut template like that, probably 15 minutes, maybe less. It was really simple. That being said, if your page is all CapCut templates, you're going to run into another problem. Tonal dissonance. Because, one, it's kind of unoriginal. If you're not continuing a story or engaging people in learning about something, they might laugh, haha, funny, but they're not going to return over and over again. If you use too many CapCut templates, it's really just not enough to get the point across. It's not enough to engage people. They won't really follow, though they might interact with your content. And so the people who interacted with you in the past might not ever know your game came out. So, again, really simple content, but you gotta be mindful of how often you're using it. And it's also really useful when you're in a slump. The other kind of low-key content ideas, although this is scripted, you do have to edit it, and you do have to have something to show. So this is something you can only really do kind of midway to late development, is show your progress. I had a different video picked for this, but whatever. That was me showing my progress on 11 days of learning how to animate. And as you can see, it's very unfinished, but I got more comments on that than I had on any other video up to that point. I later made a video about an incident in Europe that got way more comments, but this was my most engaging video up to that point. And it was just showing how I did, or just showing where I'd come from where I had been before. There's other accounts that do this really well as well. I'm going to show you Philly Bust Up. They also stay in the house sometimes, so everybody go follow them. They also have a Patreon. Go check them out on Patreon. Shoot. Okay, well, we're not looking at that right now. But showing the storyboard versus the final animation, or how the game was just a simple platformer and now it's like actually got storefronts and engaging environments, things like that. Very useful. So yeah, any questions on showing your progress? A lot of the time when you're showing your progress, you're going to get comments either on videos like mine. You'll get comments like, wow, I couldn't do that in learning this for 11 days, but really they could. I mean, you did it, so obviously they could also. But you'll get a lot of comments of admiration or support, or you may get comments like, lol, trash. But either way, people are engaging with your content. Next, let's talk about community. It takes a village to raise a child. And isn't your game your baby? When it comes to community, there's a few ways that you can kind of talk to your fan base. As you mentioned earlier on, when we were talking about asking our community about stuff or making joking content with our community, joking content is absolutely one of the best ways to build up a open community. If you're constantly this kind of sanctimonious, we're always doing well, you might get a really good following, but they're probably going to be sanctimonious and kind of infighty. By pointing out that it's okay for your fans to joke at you by joking about yourself, that can be a really good way to make sure that your fans don't get super overprotective. You're never going to fully prevent it. There are always stands, but for the most part, your fans will treat your game the way you treat your game. If you're proud of it, but you're willing to take criticism and you're responding to things, they will do that as well. creating a community kind of comes in a few parts. You want to get everyone together, either by following your TikTok page or hopefully going to a Discord where they can all talk amongst each other, make friends, and plot things to also create more fan content or something. That's a really good way to engage with the community. But having them in your comment section and everything can also be very nice. Now, there are a few kind of spicy ways to engage with the world at large and draw people in who are like-minded. I wouldn't recommend them, to be honest. As you may notice, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all of them really like to promote reactionary content. You see something, you get mad about it, you say something. It gets a lot of engagement. I don't know why people are stirred to action more by spite than anything else, but you go, world, you go. So when you are creating a community, it can be tempting to, or when you're creating a game, it can be tempting to take stances on arbitrary things. Like, maybe not even arbitrary, but unrelated things. Because even if it's important to you, a certain character being cast in a different race than they were originally made, in a completely different genre, with a completely different studio that no one has asked you to comment on, probably isn't your ballpark to comment on. Or, you'll notice that Target, Walmart, other places don't comment about major political moves. It's because they really don't want you associating their products with politics. Is that the right thing? Maybe not. But it does kind of shield them from all kinds of backlash if politics ever turn against whatever opinion they were trying to share. So do be careful about what hot takes you're sharing. You never know what hot take is a bad take. I guess one other thing is when you're engaging your community, let them hold the reins to some extent. In Death and Taxes, when I was a fan before I got hired by Placeholder Gameworks, there was already a channel dedicated to fan fiction. There was already a channel dedicated to fan art and a channel where they would show off fan art that was posted into the normal art channels and be like, hey everybody, check out this cool art that somebody did. My art was on the Steam page for Death and Taxes many times before I was ever hired by Placeholder because they were like, we really like your fan art, can we use it? And I said yes, and then my art just got on Steam. And it was really wonderful as a fan to have that experience because I felt very engaged. Encouraging people to feel like they have a relationship with you to a healthy extent, you don't want parasocial relationships, is wonderful. Acknowledging all of the work that people do is wonderful. And as indie companies, we have a unique opportunity because we have such small fan bases to really engage and build a hearty, ride or die fan base. Again, we don't want to encourage stands though, so do let them know it's okay for people to criticize you. Let's actually take a moment. Say again? Let's actually take a moment to look at a really good response to feedback from Billy Bustupford. I don't know why it mutes it when I turn it unmuted every time I open TikTok, but okay. I paused you. Get back paused. Go back. TikTok, fix your desktop site.
I just want to address this comment because I get concerned sometimes that people will buy our game thinking it's going to be like a Hat in Time and then getting disappointed when it's not. So I wanted to talk about what our game is at its core and what to expect from it so that no one's accidentally tricked into buying it when it comes out. So we're both 3D platformers, so we definitely have similar gameplay in that way. But we're not a collectathon. We don't have any lead collectible. The story is what drives the gameplay forward. And we do both have the Wind Waker art style, so I think we have that similarity going for us. However, when it comes to theming, I would compare us to Red Dead Redemption 2, Uncharted 4, The Last of Us. Those are kind of like big inspirations to us. In terms of story, you might think Owl House, Steven Universe, those kind of franchises. We've tried to create something very story-heavy, and we have a lot of dialogue going on, a lot of cutscenes. I might say they were more similar to Psychonauts. in that way, and we cover a lot about mental health and trauma, and it's just genuinely quite a dark experience, or quite a heavy experience. We recently just got a new song that had a lot of the development team crying. Very bittersweet, very melancholy, and yeah. So it depends what you're kind of looking for, but I do imagine that this game is probably more story heavy, and it's not for everyone. Oh yeah, and Super Paper Mario, huge inspiration. That was very story heavy as well. It took me a while to get into that game because of all the story heavy elements. So I just want to be upfront about that so no one is disappointed if they buy our game and find out that it's not similar.
Mic is turned off. Sorry about that.
So Mike,
All
can
right.
you repeat your last bit?
So that actually had kind of a visual sludge approach to the actual visuals. Visual sludge is where you have a couple of kind of visually engaging things going on the screen, and then you have someone talking over it, or you have like a movie audio going, or, you know, one of the visuals is a show or something. You may have seen, what's it called? Family Guy and Subway Surfer. That is a very common combination on TikTok. I don't know why. There's like a whole Family Guy pipeline. Many people have commented on it. But it's very visually engaging. It's very audially engaging. You're holding onto the audio, but you're also being stimulated by the video, so it keeps you engaged. Even in like low-key content, that can be very engaging. But here's one thing. Your response to feedback should never be low-key. You should hear feedback. You should take like a day or two to think on it and really think about what they're saying, whether or not it even is true. Think about what you want to say in response, and then respond. Because if you just do a knee-jerk reaction to criticism, you're probably going to alienate people, maybe start a controversy, and especially with indie companies, a controversy can be the end of your company, or your game, or your projects. So what we see here is that they actually responded in a very calm way to the allegation that they just made a Hat in Time. And they were like, this is why it's not a Hat in Time. We don't want people to think they're getting a Hat in Time, and then they're not. I'll be honest, the allegation given by the commenter was really dumb anyway. I'm not having to respond to it, so I can say whatever I want. But I think it was really dumb because most of the time people just want things that are the same, but a little bit different from what they've had before. Similar stories told in a new way. So even if it was very similar to a Hat in Time, it could still be unique enough to be very engaging. That being said, you know, don't just rip off people's games, but this kind of criticism, first, they recognized it wasn't true. They identified why it wasn't true, and then they made a thoughtful response. There will be criticism that is true. I remember once I was, honestly, throughout your life you get criticism. And sometimes you have to sit back and think about it and be like, yeah, okay, I am sensitive to XYZ. Or, this is a really inconsistent piece of lore in the story. Or, yeah, maybe I made this character too much of a bitch a little bit. Overall, though, when you take criticism and it is true, you're gonna feel hurt. And you need to think about it for a little bit. You need to recognize whether or not it's something you need to fix, whether or not it's important. If it is important, then you need to address it very seriously. And you need to be like, yeah, okay, you're right, this is good criticism. Thank you for the feedback. You don't always have to make video responses to feedback. In fact, I think that if you're constantly making video responses to feedback, you're probably going to get in a yandere dev situation. But generally speaking, just be very considerate with feedback. I think Billy Bust Up is a good example. Tintin, you had your hand up.
Yes. Can I just add something real quickly on the whole writing criticism responses?
Yes.
A tip I learned was basically write out the knee-jerk reaction and don't post it, so you get all the emotions out and you can really sift through it and go through, okay, what from this is it that I do want to say?
Right. Exactly. And then, do we have any questions from anyone else? All right, rockin'.
I have a
Oh,
question.
go ahead.
Like this sludge thing you mentioned. Well, like, what's the idea? Is it like you're
It's just
repairing-
overstimulating and you can't look away. I don't think it was an intentional move on the Billy Bust Up team to do a kind of visual sludge look, because, again, their content was actually engaging and useful. But you will see a lot of the time on TikTok, people will create visual sludge where it's really not useful
You
content.
mentioned like Family Guy, so it's like a trick to show people what they already like, and then your stuff next to it, kind of.
I think it really is just stimulation. Once people have a certain level of stimulation, there's enough going on the screen, they will focus on it. If it's overstimulating, they'll look away. If it's understimulating, they'll look away. But if you have the right level of stimulation, people will really focus on it.
That's like compared to the rest of TikTok, right? Because to me that was like way too much to pay attention. Like
Yeah.
I didn't hear anything from that. Like
Yeah, and it is, again, TikTok as a platform has this issue where there's a lot of overstimulating content, so that kind of thing is very normal. Once again, knowing your audience. Okay?
I mean, it's probably a good template if you just want to talk about something and don't want to create content for it. Maybe just put it on. So
That is an excellent way to do it, actually. Getting visuals from your game, excellent background for talking, because a lot of the time you're probably just going to be talking about development updates, and that might not even have a visual you can point to. You know, oh, we fixed the login screen. Cool, how's that look visually? It just looks like a login screen. Oh, we can connect to the network better now, you know, more securely. Cool, what's that look like? A lot of code. That's not engaging. So having, like you said, that kind of visual sludge approach of just like a couple of things that are visually engaging while you talk can be useful, but like you mentioned, it can be very overstimulating. So again, it kind of goes with tone in the audience you've curated age-wise, platform-wise. Let's talk a bit about promoting. So obviously it's expensive to actually pay money to promote your content. However, if you are having an announcement or you're getting close to the time where your game might be published, it's very important to have a budget for marketing. Because it is so easy to create incredible content that follows all these rules and just something in the algorithm says, too bad, so sad, no one saw it. No one knew your game released. Even your followers, sometimes. Promoting is an important tool to get people to know. There's a few ways you can promote. First, if you've got like Steam keys, you can hand those out. Inviting people to play your game, very fun. Getting content that has favorable reactions and just promoting it so that they see that you exist, also very good. Largely, you're just wanting people to get engaged with your content before you need them to do something. Because if you do it when you need them to do something, you're going to have kind of a lag time of people first becoming aware of it, then deciding. There's lag time. You might be tempted to do what's called botting. It's where you go to a page, you pay for 5,000 likes and 2,000 comments, you know, and they make it happen with bots or with, I don't know, some kind of weird system of connected Twitter accounts or something. That's not a really good way to promote. One, anything that your actual audience is saying is going to get drowned out in all of those comments. Two, you might get banned off a platform for using bots. So stick with over-the-table promoting rather than trying to bot something. Any questions on that before we move on to consistency? We've touched on consistency a few times before. Your content should be consistent in tone. It should be consistent in topic. You can break this from time to time. There are times where breaking the voice is important. Say you get embroiled somehow in a really big controversy. maybe you donated some assets to a game and then that game turned out to be really racist or something. And now everyone's coming at you thinking you're racist because you helped that game. Oof. First, yikes, sorry for that. But also, you do sometimes have to break character and say, hey, this is the situation, this is what is true, this is what isn't true. I'm sorry about this. And I'm sorry for anyone who was hurt. That's when you can break character. Those kinds of situations really are the only time you should be breaking character. And those are pretty extreme situations for indie companies like us. We're probably not engaging in creepshow art level shenanigans. If you don't know who that is, very good The Right Opinion video about the whole situation. Goes way into depth. But make sure your tone is consistent, your content is consistent.
Do you have some guidelines for engaging your community in spreading the game or spreading info about the game?
Yeah, so when it comes to engaging your community and making sure that they're spreading, there are all sorts of really fun ways that you can get them involved. Contests. You can say, hey, if you draw your character in this situation from the game, we might create a drawing of your character. Or something, just something very simple. Something like that doesn't even cost money. It does cost man hours, but it doesn't cost you're not giving them $500. You might be giving your artist $500, but that's neither here nor there. Making sure that when inviting them into a Discord, again, so that they can talk to you, having that Ask Us stuff in the Death and Taxes Discord, or the original fan content and BBU theories in the official fan Discord of Billy Bust Up, that's a really good way to engage. Respond to them. I would say even dedicate 30 minutes in your day to your Discord community to just talk to them. Or to answer comments on videos. Engage with them. You have to treat it like a job. You have to actually talk to them and set aside time, which can be very difficult, especially in indie productions, because you don't have much time, and there's a lot of pressure on you already, and you're probably doing 3 different people's jobs. But if you want a very engaged community, you do have to set aside time and treat it like a job. I mean, it's part of my job, so... And being consistent in your interactions with people, consistently talking to them, especially if it's at a particular time of day and they know to expect that you might be interacting at that time of day, that can be very engaging. That can make sure that people are following along because they know that they might have the chance to be recognized by you. In fact, recognition is probably the #1 thing any fan wants from a game they adore. I remember the first time that I was doing Death and Taxes, and I had drawn some fan art, or was drawing for Death and Taxes. I had drawn some fan art, I was in the server, I was very new, and they were like, hey, this is really cool. And they put it in the Fan Art Hall of Fame, or the Fan Art Hall. And I felt so special. And that's what kept me in the Death and Taxes community, even when it got a little quiet. And because the Death and Taxes devs were so engaged with the community, we made a 100-page design on our own, and then that spread around a little bit. And I got asked some very uncomfortable questions because of what I put in my About Me. What's up?
Someone in the chat has a question.
Yeah.
How much content should I generate to create a relevant follower base? I'm publishing on Twitter 2 or 3 times a week. I'm not sure it's enough.
Yeah. So, what's their name?
From Exa133.
Exa133. I'm a level with you. Twitter is not the place to be publishing right now. I recognize that it's very familiar and it's very good, but they're currently going through some changes where people who are not these weird blue check marks or whatever literally aren't getting promoted at all. So I wouldn't put all of my eggs in the Twitter basket. It's not so much about how often, as long as you're doing it consistently, 2 or 3 times a week is incredible, and I'm really glad about that. But I'd do it across platforms to see which audience your stuff hits with. Things like Twitter, where you can make just a simple tweet or make really funny, simple, or retweet other people's things. I would do that probably every day. Not anything long, like a lengthy video or a CapCut template, but just like one Twitter reply a day, you know. Set that aside if you're going to be building your Twitter audience. Things like TikTok, you could probably get away with doing it once a week, maybe twice. It's better if you're uploading every day. More than every day on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook can be a little overwhelming and people might mute you. But other than that, especially if you're by yourself, first focus on how much time do I have that I can dedicate to this? And then split that up per kind of channel of interaction. So maybe today I'm going to be talking on Twitter a lot for 10 minutes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then I'm going to be uploading to TikTok Tuesday, Thursday. Something like that. One thing to keep in mind with Twitter is, again, it's usually a lot simpler to just take a screenshot of what you're working on, put it on Twitter, put a caption, you're done. When it comes to things like TikTok, you have to actually block off 2 or 3 hours to maybe more than that to script, brainstorm, record the audio, and upload it. So again, for Twitter especially, keeping more frequent updates is better because they're not promoting your stuff. Did X133 have any follow-ups?
No, but Lena Official did with a bit of an elaboration, saying it is a good idea to do both quality and quantity, so most have some mostly have some random stuff on Twitter and sometimes put more effort in.
Yes, I would say that is excellent advice. Have a consistent upload schedule and make sure that they're getting quality frequently, but not everything has to be a banger. And again, Twitter is one of those places where engaging with people and building a community, making friends can be a really good way to get more people to interact with your content. I will say that there is an example here that I didn't go super in-depth on because of the controversies around it. But if you're ever curious about a really good example of someone letting the controversies and the topics and the engagement overtake the game dev, look up Yandere Dev. You're probably already familiar with him, but there are some really good videos about where everything went wrong. I think, trying to think. Quite Quackity maybe had a video on it. There's all sorts of people with videos on it. I would look it up. It's really good. Don't be Yandere Dev. Just don't be Yandere Dev. Don't let responding to the community take over game dev. What's most important is the game. Engaging your community is very important, but you should be making sure that they do eventually have a game to play. Kind of like that song earlier that we were listening to talks about. Any other questions?
If you were to start doing market research kind of thing for basically finding also examples of what others have been doing for horror.
Yes.
How would you start, or where would you start?
I would start with hashtags, to be honest. Horror RPG, game dev, things like that, and just look through accounts that are posting this kind of thing. Look at what they're doing, look what gets more engagement and what doesn't get more engagement. We're not fancy. We're not Coca-Cola or Pepsi. We don't have a giant marketing team that has subscriptions to all sorts of things that can get us analytics on our competitors. What we have to do is we have to look at their TikToks and their Twitters and their Facebooks and their YouTubes. And we have to see what they're doing, what is working, what isn't working, and then hopefully make an improved version for ourselves. Or figure out some guidelines for ourselves, rather. Other questions or comments?
So I guess you went over a lot of engaging people on platforms like TikTok. How do do you sort of think about translating that into something more long-term or more like direct action towards your game? Like, is it expected on TikTok that you would direct people to a Discord or a Patreon or a Steam
Yes.
wishlist page? Like, is that a pretty standard thing and people are like okay with that, or is it you try and keep things on TikTok? Or?
Yeah, you can do a link in bio to your Discord or a link tree that'll point to your Discord and your Steam page or something. The call to action is an important part of that. So find the Discord in our bio. Your bio is right there. They might click into it. There's also, if you're promoting a video and you're saying join our Discord, you can just link that directly to the video, so if they click on the video, it'll go to the Discord. That can be very frustrating for people though, so use that sparingly. I would say user experience is kind of what determines that. So like YouTube, TikTok, or YouTube might have link in the description, which is super easy. TikTok, Instagram are going to have link in bio, which is less user friendly because they have to click off the page, go to your bio, click the link, set whatever it is up. That's another thing to consider with platforms is how do you get links to people?
Comment about YouTube Shorts. The standard is to put the link into a comment to your short because there's no way in hell anyone can access anything else.
Yeah, sorry, I was more talking about like long form videos, but YouTube Shorts, absolutely. Comment section only.
Those exist, by the way.
Yeah. They do exist, and they are growing in popularity. They're like shitty TikTok. I mean, TikTok is already shitty, so saying shitty TikTok is a pretty grave insult.
We upload your TikTok to Shorts.
That's literally what most people do. And honestly, you should be re-uploading your stuff everywhere. Anyway, if it's totally consistent.
Sorry, one more. Along the same lines, like, how much time would you spend doing sort of engagement on platform? Like some of those TikToks you showed were like, hey, what's your favorite monster? Tell us which one. Versus the call to action that's like, hey, go off platform and like subscribe to our wish list or something.
I think that's this is going to be a really frustrating answer, but I think that is kind of dependent on the community that starts to form. You can create an environment that can create a very wholesome community and a community you like, but you will never fully control the community. So see what they respond more to. If possible, if you have some way to track analytics of people going to click that link, do that. See how many people actually do that versus how many people are like, haha, nice, and scroll to the next video. What else you can do is encourage people to hit the plus in things like Instagram and TikTok so that they are following you, and then it's more likely that at some point they'll go to your page. But it really, you've just kind of got to keep a pulse on it. I would say I would spend more time engaging with the community than posting links. If you're constantly pushing people to links, they might not really think you see them as people as much as consumers. You are trying to say, hey, we see you as people. But again, it does depend on bandwidth, because pointing someone to a link requires no additional future effort on your side, but asking them a question does. So
I would note here that for short content like Shorts and TikTok, if your content looks like an advertisement, it will be kept off.
yes, that's why the stop scrolling doesn't work, because they will immediately be like, oh, cringe, and they'll scroll.
If you have a link or like, hey, our Steam page is now up at the end.
Yes. Do not start with the call to action, usually. There are very simple examples of this not being true, like when they asked, what creature do you want to hear about? That was okay because they're not telling you to go buy something or click on something. They're just asking you a question about you. If the call to action is to share something about themselves, you can usually do it somewhat early on. But if it's something where they're doing something that pretty much exclusively benefits you, save it for the end. And don't put it at the end of a long video, because if it's at the end of a long video, other people might click off at that point. So, other thing is keeping separate brands. Make sure that if they are tonally very different, you keep them separate. You don't want the tonal dissonance. We are going to have different pages for Broken Alliance and Craft because Craft is very cozy, although it does have a bit of an RPG dark elements to it. Broken Alliance is an isometric pixel game, and just visually, tonally, very different. Although it is beautiful, and I encourage you to play both. Make sure you're having different brand images for each game, different voices. You want to spend time on your game and making sure that what's outward facing looks nice. Because the more time you spend on that, the more effort you spend on that, the more other people will be able to engage with it and see how beautiful it is. Like, Craft is very simple and we'll get to you, Coca-Cola. Calm down. Craft is very cutesy and engaging. Broken Alliance is still pixel art, so you know exactly what you're getting into. Also, branding lets you know what the product is before you ever look at any content about the product. So yeah, having different brands, different TikToks for different tones is very important.
Will this be recorded and put on the Twitch later?
I think it's going on YouTube.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Sorry, I am starting to run long. I was afraid that my content would be too short, so I kept adding things, and I think we have started to get into a problematic territory here. Dinner is in 49 minutes. Finally, do not be Coca-Cola. The year is 2018. New Zealand is a beautiful landscape. And in New Zealand live two distinct peoples. Well, not so distinct anymore. You have the Maori, who are indigenous to the land, and the non-Maori, who are, I believe, usually referred to as Pakeha by the Maori. Not an insult, I did look up if it was a slur. And generally there's a lot of tension between the two. There's a lot of racism that the Maori face. The erasure of their culture is still sometimes very prominent. And we're a little bit responsible for this. In the media, the Maori are usually portrayed like simpletons who live on islands. Maybe don't do that in your game. But Coca-Cola sees this land where there's all this conflict, and there's these different people who, if they could just see that they're similar, they could make friends. And they could make friends by drinking a lot of Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola steps in. Brilliant Coca-Cola. And they're like, let's get a conversation started. Oh my god, I know exactly what to do. Let's unify the Maori and the people of New Zealand by combining the Maori language with the very simple, mate. Kia ora, mate. Yeah, kia ora is a greeting from the people. Mate is how Kiwis greet each other. So let's do kia ora, mate. There's cringing in the room as we're waiting for the drop of where this went wrong. Kia ora is actually a greeting. It's hello. In Maori, though, M-A-T-E spells mate, which is death. Hello, death! Twitter erupted. Coca-Cola will never live this down, to the point where I was taught this in a marketing class in college. Hello, death. The Maori used it as a way to point out how foreign corporations tended to simplify their culture, not actually ask any Maori people how anything worked, and then make it kitschy so that they could sell more stuff, which is exactly what Coke was doing. The Kiwis thought it was hilarious. Both sides were just ragging on Coca-Cola. Keep in mind, they had created entire vending machines for this campaign. They had created videos, they had created advertisements, billboards, hello death, everywhere, all over New Zealand. Kia ora, mate. Hello. every day Coca-Cola brings you closer to death.
It's kind of a sweet message.
It is a sweet message. They tried. Let's talk about my Coca-Cola moment. I was working on a webcomic, and during the world building phase, I realized that it really kind of felt like everyone was just Victorian England. Like, that was the setting of everywhere. So I did a lot of research on different cultures. I didn't want any one culture to be representative of a culture I didn't know or understand, and didn't have people I could ask it about. So I did mixtures of different cultures. It was very fun. And in part of that, I decided that I needed to change the names for basically every character, because I wanted my characters to have names that would, when you heard them, you could tell, oh, they're probably from Aromaole, or, oh, they're probably from Anvilmar, just by hearing the names. It would be really cool world building. I had this character named Hielo. Any Spanish listeners will be laughing because he is a fire elemental. And Hielo means ice. So, I decided, okay, I really like the pun. I really like the silly humor of a fire elemental named Ice. But let's get his name to actually match up with where he's from. I named him Haole. Similar to Hielo, but it used more of the phonetics from the region. Here's the problem. Haole is a slur for non-Hawaiians. I got ganked in a Facebook group after sharing that, and within 12 hours he had a different name. He went back to Hielo. He was Ice the Fire Elemental. And I learned a very important lesson. Do not be like Coca-Cola. What can we learn? Be intentional. When you are going into somewhere, you shouldn't be thinking entirely of yourself. You should be thinking, what am I saying, and how does that affect the people around me? Don't be Coca-Cola. Don't be me. Don't use culture as a point of advertising if you're not from that culture. It's really cringy, and also minimizes the actual struggles those cultures face. Consider the communities. Talk to members of the community. Recently, I had a disability advocate review some of the mobility aids I had in my webcomic for different characters in the story to make sure that they would actually be good mobility aids and not just really fancy fantasy rocks. So, engage them, ask for feedback, and feedback isn't an attack. When everyone started ganking on me for naming a character a racial slur, you know what I did? I changed his name. And I wasn't offended that they were pointing out that he had been named really poorly. I took the feedback, I thought about it, I accepted it, and I changed. Feedback is an opportunity to learn. And now I look up all my characters' names before I share them with anyone. So let's review. That's right, we're in the home stretch. Actually, before we review, does anyone have questions? If your question is, how did that go for Coca-Cola? The answer is badly. But other than that, any questions in the chat?
Seems good right now.
All right, let's review. And we're getting close to dinner, so let's do this fast. Reviewing. You are a character. Represent yourself online as a character. It puts a wall between you and criticism you'll get for your game, and it also puts a wall between criticism you might get and the game you're creating. Tell a story. Make sure that you are tonally consistent. Make sure that you are something people can relate to. Something that is simple. Something people can get engaged with and know what they're coming to every time. So that goes into being consistent. Make sure that you are consistently uploading, consistently engaging with the community. Anything you don't spend time on will atrophy. If you don't spend time on your community, eventually it will go silent. If you don't spend time on your content, eventually no one will follow it. Same thing as if you don't exercise your arm, you're probably going to be a wimp. Get good!
Fuck you! Sorry, I
Oh,
really
sorry.
do have an arm problem.
Oh, sorry. No, I was saying that because I'm a wimp. I'm sorry that I hurt you. And second, third, last is don't be Coca-Cola. Engage with your community, get feedback, learn from it before it becomes a problem. Don't print hundreds of vending machines with Hello Death on it unless you're making a cool Halloween themed something. And I don't even think they do Halloween there. And yeah, that's the summary. Class dismissed. Any questions? All right, class dismissed.
Quinn, thank you so much. That
Thank
was really
you.
great, and I wrote down everything. Do you want do you want a note?
I'm just going to finish off the stream before you.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us. We may have another Game Dev talk next week, possibly from Lena. I'm not 100% certain, but we will be at the same time at 4 p.m. on Sunday, 4 p.m. Central European Time. We also do Spell Collective at Game Developers Conference on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Central European Time, where we share progress of the projects we're working on in the house. So feel free to join us there and join our Discord. I think there's a link probably in the